I will be forever the myth.
You're the king of kings,
There's always a pecking order. The little packers never mess with the big packers. So I'm a rooster, and he's a chicken, so to speak.
All right, welcome back to the Bodybuilding Legends podcast, and I have two very special guests with me today. We have Mr. Ed Connors, who was one of the owners of Gold's Gym when it really got going and they franchised it out in California. And then we also have one of the other owners, Tim Kimber, who is also joining us today, so we could tell some stories about the good old days of Gold's Gym. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hi, John.
Hello,
Hi, Ed.
John. Hi, Tim.
Well, it's good to have you guys together.
Thank you. It's good to see my old partner.
Yeah. When's the last time you guys saw each other?
Well, geez, I don't know.
A couple of years ago?
10 years?
Oh, really? It's been that long, huh? Okay, cool.
Yeah, we communicate every month or so, but
Okay.
I don't think I've seen Tim in a long time.
Wow. All right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, Ed, before we get started, tell us about your book. I know we had you on the podcast before and you were talking about working on a book. So now you said it's about to be released in January, huh?
Well, I have a publisher that has given me a deadline of January 1st. So I'm hoping that things will be good enough for him to go ahead and publish in January. That's the goal anyway.
Okay. So you said this book, before when I had you, we were talking about all the guests you had over at your house and all the guys that you helped get started in bodybuilding and in the wrestling world by being one of the owners of Gold's Gym. So is that a big part of the book, of all the guests you had?
Well, ironically, when I started writing, I broke the book up into 4 sections for ease of printing. And the first part is a general overview of the fitness industry and how it developed in America. And then my second part is regards to my house guests over the years. And the third part is which is now the biggest part, is the management of Gold's Gym, because I think, Pete, Tim, and I, in our own strange way, we're a great team in terms of, creating the Gold's Gym and what it became.
Yeah.
And I think this story needs to be told, because I think especially American business, thanks to people like Jack Welch, GE, there's just so much emphasis on a strong CEO. And I think what Silicon Valley has proven with the dot-com businesses, is that it takes a team. Even something like Elon Musk, and he hires a lot of great people that make him allow him to do what he does. And I think Pete, Tim, and I were not afraid to hire people that were smarter, better, worked harder than we did, and we let them do their thing, and it worked out great.
Okay.
And also, I think people too don't realize it was my house guests who I really believe helped make Gold's Gym the Mecca and the biggest gym chain in the world, because you forget that the magazines were the social media of the day.
Yeah.
And Gold's most of these magazines didn't pay the photographers to travel to contests or give them any kind of business expense. The athletes had to come to the Mecca, and we were happy to provide, a place to train, and in some cases a place to live. And they helped make the gym famous. I mean, for 25 years we were involved, that they were it.
Yeah.
And, no, it was, Tim says, I should let Tim talk, but Tim said we were family. And that's, I think, that's an important part of my book.
Okay. Hey, Tim, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into bodybuilding originally, and how you ended up owning Gold's Gym with Ed and with Pete Grymkowski.
How detailed do you want me to go?
Go into detail.
Well, I can go back to 1976, I believe it was.
Okay.
I competed in the Mr. Rochester contest, and I was natural. And I forgot now, I didn't do very well. I think I came in 3rd out of 3. But I used to work at Kodak, Eastman Kodak.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had a decent build, but, it was obvious I was working out, but I wasn't big by any means. And I walked around the plant and knew a lot of people. And then one day a guy said, "Hey, Tim, there's a guy bigger than you over in Department 8. And I went, "What?" So I had all, magazines and stuff. And of course, Arnold was my original inspiration.
Yeah.
And I went over to Department 8 and I saw this guy immediately sitting in his chair. He was an inspector inspecting parts, and his arms were out through his sleeves, which were slit. And I was, oh my God. And I went right over to him and I said, "Hi, how did you get that big?" And he said, "Steroids." And I went, "Okay, I'm in. I'm in. And there's living proof right here that there's somebody that's taking them, and I can see what it's done." And I went, "Okay." I wanted to keep competing, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to compete without them.
Yeah.
At least I wasn't going to be able to compete without them. There are probably those who can, but I wasn't one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, "Well, now how do I get him?" He said, "Pete Grymkowski. You got to meet Pete Grymkowski. He's bouncing over at this nightclub." So I grabbed two of my buddies and I went over to this nightclub and that Friday. And there was Pete. And I'd, of course, seen him in the magazines.
Yeah.
And recognized him immediately. He was standing at the front door in his tuxedo as a bouncer. And I walked up and I said, "Mr. Grymkowski?" He said, "Yes." I said, "I'm interested in getting big, and I was told you could help me." And he put his hand on my shoulder and says, "I think I can help you, little fellow." So lo and behold, he lived 2 blocks from where I was living in a buddy's house.
No kidding. Wow.
So my buddies left me at the club with Pete that night, and Pete took me home. And I got my first injection and my first orals.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
And that started me off on my steroids. And then Pete and I were like brothers. We hung out together. He was teaching me everything, how to work out, and all that stuff. And so in 1978, I competed in Mr. Empire State and I won.
Okay.
And so I was hooked. And again, I was still working at Kodak, and I had just completed my apprenticeship in tool and die work at Kodak, 4-year program. Like 2 weeks later, and Pete calls me up and he says, right after I won the contest, maybe a couple weeks after, and he says, "Timmy, I need a partner, and I got a chance to buy Gold's Gym, and I need a couple partners. And are you interested?" And I went, "Whoa, yes, I am." Because I'm thinking I wanted to train for Mr. America. That was my next goal, was Mr. America.
Okay.
And of course I was thinking big. and he said, "Well, yeah." And I said, "Well, how much do I need?" And he says, "You need," I think it was 25,000.
Okay.
And the price of the gym, I think, was 100,000, Ed, plus liabilities accepted.
Yes, that's exactly right.
From the equipment companies. So I called my dad up and I says, "Dad, I had nothing. I need 25,000 to buy into Gold's Gym." And he went, "What? No gym's worth $100,000. And I don't have the money anyway, so sorry." So I had to call Pete back up and I said, "Pete, I can't do it financially, but can I come work for you?" And he says, "Absolutely." So I had just gotten married in October. The week after I won the Empire State, I got married.
Okay.
And so we're now talking December-ish, I think.
Okay.
And so we just bought a house. So I go home and I tell my wife, we're moving to California. We list our house, we sell it, and we were back in California May 3rd.
Wow. Okay.
No, March. Was it March? I think it was March. They had just bought. So interesting enough, since I can't participate in the purchase, he gets Ed and a guy named Denny Doyle to take my place.
Okay.
So, so we sell our house, move out to California, and because of my machining background, I'm fixing the equipment in the gym. I'm sweeping the floors.
Okay.
I'm selling memberships at the front desk, and Denny had taken over as manager of the club. And so Pete had just won Mr. World in '77.
Yeah. I remember.
And so I think at the time he was the reigning Mr. World because they didn't do the next 2 years, I think.
Okay.
Um,
That was in Acapulco, right? Acapulco, Mexico.
Yeah. Good memory. And so Denny's managing the gym. So one day Pete calls me up and he says, "Timmy, don't we have a seated blue calf machine in the back of the gym?" And I went, yeah, we do. He says, now it was one of the Gold's Gym that we made our own equipment, and it was actually one of ours. So it was pretty obvious the way it was manufactured. It was Gold's Gym.
Yeah.
So I go in the back of the gym and I go, what? The machine's gone. So I went back on the phone. I says, "Pete, it's not here." He goes, dude, this son of a bitch, and so and so. He goes, "I want a meeting with Ed and Denny right now." Okay. So I call Ed and Denny up and I said, "Okay, guys, Pete wants to have a meeting." So they all came in, Pete came in, and lo and behold, Pete traveling the world, doing seminars and exhibitions as Mr. World, saw the seated calf machine in a gym up the coast.
No way.
Yeah. And I think he had a really good suspicion how that happened. So Denny, I won't say anything more other than Denny decides to sell his shares of stock out of the gym. Because apparently that machine was sold for $100 to that gym up the coast.
Oh man.
Out the back door. So Denny then decides to sell his shares in the business.
Okay.
So now I have some money from selling my house.
Yeah.
And my mother-in-law offers to loan us some money as well. So we were then able to buy Denny's stock out.
Okay.
However, and Ed can attest to this, Pete then decides that rather than just, we're going to double Denny his money, and Pete's going to take half the stock. So
Okay.
he then becomes major shareholder because they were a third, Ed, correct?
Yeah, I don't really remember that. So,
Yeah, you were third. So Pete then took another half of the third, and he then became 51% or 54%, whatever it was, he became major stockholder.
53%.
Yeah, and we got to buy in and at that time. So that is how the three of us got together.
Wow. And Ed, you're the one
from
who
my
told,
side.
Yeah. Ed, you're the one who told Pete to move to California, right? From Rochester.
Well,
Or you
actually,
were in Florida, I think, right? Orlando?
actually, I was interviewing with Disney to work on Epcot. I'm also an architect, as you know. And I went over to see a friend that was working out at Orange Avenue Gym in Orlando. And Pete Grymkowski was there, and he was the biggest guy I'd ever seen. And I'd also come from an interview out in LA. And I said, you belong out there. You should, you should come out and train for Weider's Mr. World. And he said, "I'd love to, but I have no car. I'm going through divorce, no money." So I said, "Well, if I take the job out there, I'll fly you out and you can stay with me until you get on your feet."
Yeah.
So Pete became, one of my first house guests, or my first house guest. And we stayed in touch. And then one day he called me up and said, "Gold's Gym is for sale. Are you interested?" And I thought I was going to be one of, quite a few investors. But I had gone in the gym when I first saw it, and I thought, God, this would be neat to own it. I had as I write in my book, I really believe in the power of positive thinking. And I just conceptually thought it would be great, because my first experience joining a gym when I was at school at Berkeley was very unpleasant. And in the back of my mind, I thought, if I ever have a chance to change this, I will. Because, back in the day, they essentially kind of locked you in a room and sold you a very expensive membership. And Gold's Gym really transformed the way I started charging $19 a month with my first gym in 1980. And that there are still gyms charging that, at 40 years later.
Yeah.
So, we transformed the industry. And I think Tim mentions that he had seen Pete in the magazine. So there's a good example of the power of the media back then. He knew who Pete was. Pete's motto was "Think Big." And, we were, that's the way we thought. Pete, was traveling the world and realized not everybody can come to the Mecca. So we would bring the Mecca to the people with the form of a gym license or franchise.
Yeah. Tim, when you were talking to Pete and he told you to come out there, you obviously knew about Gold's Gym, right? You knew because it was the Mecca back then in the 70s.
Oh, sure. I mean, I'd seen Pumping Iron probably a million times already by then, and knew that was the place that the champions trained at.
Yeah.
And I can remember the first time, and it already just brought goosebumps back to my arms. I remember the first time walking in that door, just being amazed and just in awe. And I could, again, the goosebumps are flying. I could just feel it. It was just for me. Unfortunately, I never competed again, or fortunately, whatever.
Yeah.
But it was just an amazing, amazing place.
And John, see, Tim brings up a very good point. Again, that when we bought the gym, it was on 2nd Street in Santa Monica. It was 90 feet by 50 feet. So it's 4,500 square foot gym. And it's hard for people to understand that was the Mecca. Nowadays, that's nothing in square footage. But back then it was huge. I mean, Arnold had to go from Graz, Austria to Venice, California to get a workout in 1968 because there was nothing like Gold's Gym.
Yeah. What year did they move it to Santa Monica, Ed? I know I asked you about this before.
1977.
77, okay. And then what year did you guys go back to Venice in the bigger building?
1981.
81.
February, yep.
Yeah, okay. Tim engineered that. Tim should tell you the story about how he engineered the move. It's in my book, but it was a brilliant. Tim was brilliant at negotiating. And,
it was just luck. It was desperation and luck.
What happened? How did that happen, Tim?
Well, heart to heart, I had made the movie The Hustle of Muscle Beach back in late 79.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Early 80. But we were getting casting calls daily for commercials. They're looking for bodybuilders, females, males. I mean, we were getting all the calls. And one of the calls came in was the show Heart to Heart.
Yeah.
And they were looking for a gym to shoot in. And they wanted to shoot in Gold's Gym. So at the time we were getting, it feels like $500 for a day to let somebody come in and shoot. But these guys wanted to come in and take over the gym. So they want us to shut it down.
How long did they want to do that for?
Well, that's their downfall that they had. Because I think they booked like 2 or 3 days.
Okay.
But the interesting part of this was that we were actually moving to Venice in a few days from when they came in to shoot. So as best as I recall, but I do have the contracts, so if needed be, I could ever pull them back out. But as best as I recall, they contracted us for 2 days at it, and I charged them $2,500 for a day. So it was like $5,000, and we had to shut the gym down for 2 days. So the first day of shooting, Robert Wagner, this is Heart to Heart with Stephanie Powers and Robert Wagner.
Yeah.
And Robert hurts his back. So under contract, they're obligated to pay for the 2 days. But, and again, the gym was shut down. We put signs up, closed.
Wow.
So they're paying us the $5,000. So then they have to obviously come back and shoot. And I'm thinking, and we've got champion bodybuilders, champion athletes, actors and actresses. And I felt the pinch, from our members, that an obligation to our members, really, that we needed to be open.
Yeah.
But we also needed the money because of the move. We were, spending a ton of money. Help me, Ed, too, if I'm misspeaking, but to make the move happen. So I think they contract another day, and I said $5,000 for the day, and I said, "You guys are killing me. because I've got to tell our members we're not open.
Yeah.
And these people, expect us to be open. They need us open. And so they pay it. They walk right back in with a check. And but now we got to move. And I tell them, look, we're moving, changing locations. They said, no problem. We can make that work.
Oh, wow.
and actually, we will move you in our trucks.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah. So they loaded up the gym in their trucks.
Holy cow.
And moved us to the Venice location, which is still in main room today.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome.
I'm also in this show as an actor.
Yeah.
Right. Frank Zane is the male, the bodybuilding lead, and I've got a little part in it as well. So I'm caught, with all this stuff. So to make a long story short, because I'm not remembering all the exact pieces, they book us again. Robert hurts his back. He can't do it. They've booked it. They come back for another day. And I said, I just kept doubling the day. And I said, 12,500 for the next day. But I don't know why they weren't booking more days, because it was obvious they weren't going to get this done in a day or 2 days.
Right.
So they come back for another day. And I said, 25,000. I know they have it already in the can. They have nowhere to go. Right. For continuity, film continuity. They can't go somewhere else. I said, 25,000. We ended up getting $65,000.
Holy shit.
Total for the location shoot. And Robert Wagner comes up to me afterwards. He says, Tim, I got to shake your hand. That's the most we've ever paid for a location in our lives. And I said, well, thank you, Robert. You probably saved us.
Yeah. So it went from 5,000 to ended up being 65,000.
$65,000 we got and moved.
Yeah.
And we got a collection of fake weight plates, which were invaluable in the
many photo shoots. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that what year was that, Tim, that they did that?
81.
We moved in February of 81. Yeah.
Okay. Isn't that crazy how bodybuilding was so popular back then? Like the media loved it, the Hollywood, the TV shows, and it's just, when you look at how bodybuilding is today, how it's thought of in the main press, in the general public, it's just amazing how they were so fascinated with bodybuilding back then.
We were getting so many calls a day that I because I was now managing the gym, because when Denny left, I became the manager.
Yeah.
And I couldn't take all the calls that we were getting. So I told Pete and Ed, I said, guys, I need help with these, just handling these calls, because we were getting a lot of exposure, obviously, from all these photo shoots and commercials and stuff.
TV shows, yeah.
So that's how we got Derek Barton. I had met Derek in a softball game, celebrity softball games up at Fairfax High.
Okay.
And I don't know what made me think that he would be good at this, but he was amazing at it, obviously. As time will tell, through the next 20 some plus years, that Derek just went through the company and became our advertising coordinator and marketing genius. And it was because of these casting calls, we brought him in and start the motion picture and television division of Gold's Gym.
Wow.
And the rest is history. I mean, the job he did. Yeah.
Why do you guys think that was, that Hollywood was so fascinated with bodybuilding? Was it just because bodybuilding was a new thing to the general public and there weren't that many gyms around?
What do you think, Ed?
Well, I think Arnold changed Hollywood's perception of bodybuilders. I think up until Arnold, people thought, the entertainment industry thought bodybuilders were hard to work with. And I think Arnold charmed them. And as you write in my book, there was a lot of stuff happening in the late 70s that sort of suddenly fitness was the new thing.
Yeah.
I could rattle off a dozen things that were going on. I mean, Jane Fonda started her aerobic studio and tapes, and Time magazine, highlighted the bodybuilding world. Rolling Stone magazine, John Travolta in the movie. It was just a lot going on. The running book came out. Boyd Epley back at the University of Nebraska, former Mr. Nebraska, started putting weight training on the Nebraska football agenda and transformed the way colleges thought about weight training for football or baseball or basketball. So no, it was the 79 was not only the year that Pete, Tim, and I were the owners of Gold's Gym, but it was the beginning of an incredible change in America regarding the culture and the perception of fitness.
And Louis was doing the Hulk.
Yeah, I mentioned that in my book. Again, that was just another touchstone. The first Superman movie came out, and the Hulk. Jake Steinfeld was on CNN, Body by Jake. So all these things were happening. So that the timing, as I write in my book, life, I think, is half about luck, and the other half is what you do with it. And Pete, Tim, and I were there at the right time. We got lucky, but we worked very hard and were open-minded, I think, to what was going on. There's an NPR show, Guy Raz, called How I Built This, and he always asks his people he's being interviewed, how much of this do you attribute your life to luck? And they typically say 50%. And we were all, Pete was lucky to meet me, but I was lucky to meet him. I was lucky to have Tim as a partner, because I could not have done it alone. And, Tim brought in people like Derek. Derek reminded me, Tim, the other day that we charged an additional $100 a year to a member to be part of the motion picture and TV. I had forgotten that. But someone like Rick Valenti told me he got 47 gigs from that membership.
Yeah.
Which, he's probably still living off residuals, or that changed his life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So but people wanted to be associated with health and fitness back. This is the beginning of AIDS. And so Weider would get celebrities to be on the cover of his magazines. And Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but we never paid anyone to endorse Gold's Gym. Is that right?
Correct. No.
Yeah.
We gave sportswear away, if you know, but there was never any money exchanged.
People wanted to be associated with health and fitness.
Yeah.
It was a new big thing. Yeah.
They did an episode about competing at Venice Beach and stuff on the Incredible Hulk too, right? Right, Tim?
Say that again.
They did an episode on the Incredible Hulk about competing, right? And then Louis was in the contest, I think.
Oh, I don't remember that one.
I thought like Louis and Samir Banood, and I thought they did an episode. Yeah.
That could have been, I don't recall.
And then I think they did it on the streets of San Francisco too. Remember when Arnold was in that one? That was in the late 70s, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it just seems like I got into bodybuilding, I think in 76, 77. And I remember when I got into it, I was a little kid, and all my teachers and relatives were like, this is the weirdest sport ever. You don't want to do this sport. And then I saw a change, like after pumping iron, where everybody became fascinated with muscles. Yeah. And I don't think people knew anything about building muscles or anything. And then it just kind of like came into the limelight, and it seemed like the media in general was just so fascinated with bodybuilding. It was really kind of like the beginning of the golden age, which then went into the 1980s, as you said, Ed.
I think you're right. I mean, George Butler, who recently died 2 months ago, who was the director of Pumping Iron, Arnold gave him a very nice tribute on Instagram or Facebook. And I really believe that was the catalyst that changed everything. Mm-hmm. Because the movie was seen nationally, and as Tim mentioned, I mean, he saw it many times. It became kind of a cult classic.
Oh yeah.
And at the same time, Tim, you could talk a little bit about this, but at the same time that the movie was coming out, Pete Grymkowski engineered the breakaway from the AAU of the NPC. And so this sort of started the whole rash of bodybuilding contests all over the country, because up until then, the AAU would have the bodybuilding sort of as an afterthought after the weightlifting. And Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the time, I think the bodybuilding contests were after midnight, with a spotlight hooked to a basketball hoop.
Basketball net, yeah.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I mean, it was ridiculous. What's his name? Bob Hoffman didn't care. And but Pete was in a famous meeting, I think, in our gym on 2nd Street with Ben Weider and Jim Mannion and others.
Ken Sprague.
where Ben Weider said that if you'll form your own association, we'll give you exclusive coverage in our magazines, and the die was cast. So, but then there was this explosion of bodybuilding contests all over the country. I mean, there were teenage contests back then where they'd have 60 competitors.
Yeah, that was happening in Chicago, where I was from, because I was
nowadays,
early 80s. Yeah.
Nowadays, there are more trophies than competitors.
Yeah. Well, I don't even think teenage bodybuilding even exists. You're lucky if you get one or two. But yeah, I went through the same thing.
I'm sure it's one of the many categories. I mean, I write in my book that the NPC gave out 619 pro cards last year.
Yeah.
Versus in the old days, I mean, they only gave out a couple pro cards a show, and that's 3 times a year.
Yeah.
So it's a different world. And John, to your comment about it's a changed environment, I just saw some stuff on Instagram where the majority of respondents said that they prefer, say, Chris Bumstead's physique to the big pros on the Olympia stage. And I think we're coming full circle.
Yeah.
Where again, the past is sort of good again, and people want that look back of the golden age.
Yeah, I agree.
And actually, ironically, the same thing is happening with the gyms. The big box gyms, the bigger Gold's gyms, or Lifetime Fitness, or 24-hour LA Fitness. They're kind of in trouble now post-pandemic at 35,000 square feet, or 100,000 if they're Lifetime. It's just too big. People aren't going back to the gyms right now. So ironically, a smaller gym like what we started with in the 80s seems to be the way to go right now.
How much do you think it was Joe Weider's magazines that helped really fuel bodybuilding and the interest in bodybuilding?
Oh, it was huge. I write in my book that I would stand in the lobby sometimes of a Gold's Gym in Venice. I'd ask people why they were there. And, some people would say, oh, I saw Arnold in the movie, or I saw Lou in the Hulk, or the Ultimate Warrior. But mostly it was because of a Weider cover, or, Weider magazine.
Yeah.
And so Weider's magazines, people don't realize it, but they were all over the world in, I think, 36 different languages. 3 alone in India, where there are now 100 Gold's Gyms. How does that happen? Well, thanks to Joe Weider's magazine. People forget, but back in the day, Shape magazine and Muscle and Fitness were in the top 10 in all American magazine sales. You could go. Remember, you could, John. You could probably go to a supermarket, and there would be Muscle and Fitness at the checkout stand.
Yeah.
Try and find a magazine today. No, it's a different world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think created a lot of our interest when we were kids, and Tim, you could probably relate to this too, is when you were young, it was those Weider magazines that really got you excited about bodybuilding.
Totally. But I bought every magazine I get my hands on.
Me too.
Remember the little ones from England or something? And I forgot the name, but there was a little one, always a black and white cover. And
Tomorrow's Man, Tim.
Pardon?
Tomorrow's Man.
Marvelous Man?
No, Tomorrow's Man.
Yeah.
Oh, Tomorrow's Man? Yeah, there was. I get my hands on Hopkins.
I have one. I'll dig it out.
Oh my! I'm sure you do, Ed.
And those little Iron Man ones, remember those with the
small?
Oh
yeah.
I
loved all of them. It didn't matter. Just any picture I get my hands on.
Yeah,
it was inspiring. But yeah, for sure.
And it's funny how you talk about luck and then being prepared for it, or like it's almost like fate. I remember when Arnold tried to get into the movies in the late 70s, and they were all against him. All the agents in Hollywood were like, you're too big. The actors today are like Woody Allen and Dustin Hoffman and, the smaller guys. And they said, you just don't fit in. And then the 1980s came along, and that's when the explosion in exercise and muscles came along. And then he fit right in perfectly with that. And that was the Reagan era. And that's when they started all those action movies. And then everybody had muscles in the movies, even like Bruce Willis had a muscular physique, and, Van Damme, and of course, Stallone, so it was like, that was the era. And he was just poised perfectly for that era, right when he got into acting.
Oh yeah.
I mentioned that in my book, the Reagan era, which was an incredible economic engine, was when we had our growth. So that ushered in an incredible well, the entire time we owned the gym, we benefited from an amazing American economy.
Yeah. Let's talk about women's bodybuilding, because that started right around 1982. That's when they had the first.
No,
Miss
it started
Olympia.
earlier. We actually held the first women's bodybuilding contest in 1979.
No kidding. What was the name of that?
Women's bodybuilding championships.
Okay.
Lisa Lyons won
Lisa
it.
Lyon.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
She was dating Pete Grymkowski then, wasn't she, Tim?
Well, I guess you could say that.
And that you guys held it out there in California?
We had it at Santa Monica Civic Auditorium. We actually sold out the auditorium, 3,000 seats.
Unbelievable. Crazy.
We weren't greedy about tickets prices, and we didn't charge the competitors,
Never charge the competitors any contest.
Really? Unbelievable.
Now they're paying $300, aren't they, John?
Oh yeah, for national shows for sure. Yeah. And
So-
that's just for the entry
Yeah.
fee, not counting
always-
the suit and the tanning and all the other stuff.
We always felt that was double dipping. You know, you're selling tickets to go see the people on the stage. Well, how can you charge the people on the stage then?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so
right.
we didn't charge the competitors.
Tim,
That's
I think
awesome.
we even actually gave each competitor a free ticket to give to their spouse or friend, right?
I don't remember that part, but
Okay, yeah. And we didn't charge, and now it's obscene. I mean, if you have 600 entries, you've got 180 grand right there just in entry fees.
Yeah.
There's no incentive to make a show or sell tickets, and I miss all of that, because I mean, to me, a flat ballroom is no venue for a bodybuilding contest. You know,
Yeah, I agree. I love when they're in the theater, because it's a show. It's like a theater, so it should be in a
there
auditorium
should
like
be some
that.
drama to it.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. But
And
that's
you're-
crazy how women's bodybuilding came right at the end of right when Pumping Iron got the interest in bodybuilding and in muscles, and the media was getting involved in bodybuilding, and then women's bodybuilding started, and they were really fascinated with that, because they had never seen women with muscles, and the women back then were very sexy with muscles.
But John, that was also the beginning of Women's Lib. You know,
Yeah.
Corey Everson was my first female house guest. She was an interior designer, and she knew I was an architect and was looking to move to LA to pursue her career.
Mhm.
And I mean, she was incredible. The world had never seen anything quite like her.
Yeah.
we also started pairs competition. Was that the same time, Ed?
Yeah, that was actually the same. That was Nick Martino, our former partner, who unfortunately died way too early. But he was brilliant. He was a producer, co-producer.
Hollywood Squares. Yeah.
And he, in order to sell the show to HBO, he thought we should have a pairs competition, which frankly I miss. I think that was one of the better events that they've now done away with.
Yeah, I did. I like that too.
Mixed pairs, yeah.
Yeah, it really showed a lot of artistic, expression with putting the two people together. Yeah.
In fact, back then HBO didn't want the show without the pairs.
Right.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
did
guys
that with
were
the American Bodybuilding Championships, I think is when we did that with, started with, I think. 81 when, or was it 80 when Gary Leonard won?
It was when Gary Leonard, that was the last AAU NPC show. That was when the last.
That was 1980.
Yeah.
Belknap 181.
in Vegas. Yeah.
Yeah, we did that one.
Okay.
And that was with the Universe, Mr. Universe trials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was an incredible show. That was one of the best shows ever, I think.
What was the crowd like for that one?
Oh, it was Vegas, it was.
Yeah.
Must have been several thousand people, right, Tim?
I have no recollection, sorry.
Yeah.
I know we did it.
Was that Caesar's Palace? You guys?
It was at Caesar's Palace. I mean, it was a huge event. I kind of remembered being outdoors, but I remember several thousand people.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
And Ed, you guys got some flack, right, when you had the women come in to train at your gym? Because when you say there was some protests down south or something?
No, there was protests when we were building an aerobic studio. I actually got death threats because how could the Mecca have aerobics? But no, we had women. When we moved the gym back to Venice, we built a women's locker room. The gym in Santa Monica did not have an area for women. In fact, Tim, you should talk about how the women's jobs were handled.
What we inherited.
Yeah.
There was a small women's locker room, but it was right next to the manager's office.
Wow.
Yeah. But it was tiny.
Yeah.
With the
So-
men's locker room, the chin bar, there was a chin bar next to the men's shower room, which was a gang shower.
Uh-huh.
And guys would do chins, or women would do chins, and look over the wall. There's the guys taking a shower.
That's hilarious.
We
But when you
inherited
guys
some
went
funny
to
stuff.
when you went to Venice, the women were a big part of working out, right? And that was pretty much the first time that was happening.
It was really growing fast. I mean, I can remember in Santa Monica, we had Lisa Lyon, Stacy Bentley, Claudia Wilburn, and just Rachel came in
Yeah.
1979 or 80. Just a handful of women that were in there.
Mhm.
Probably a couple more that I apologize that I'm forgetting names, but there was less than 24 women in the gym.
Yeah.
Well, it was the
Yeah.
aerobics program that eventually increased the number of women in the gym in Venice. I don't know that Tim, do you think we ever hit even 35%?
Probably a little more than that eventually, but yeah, maybe not yet. You're probably right with that.
Some of the gyms I was involved with, John, like Santa Barbara, we hit over 50% female, but that took a long time.
Wow.
But remember, this was back in the day when Monday, Wednesday, and Friday were men, Tuesday, Thursday, women, Saturday was co-ed, and the gyms were closed on Sunday. People can't imagine that now, but that's
No, it's just unbelievable.
yeah.
What gave you the idea to start franchising the gyms?
Well, I think it was Pete. Basically, he said, well, I'm traveling all over. They always ask me what Gold's Gym Venice is like, but I was thinking they can't all come and visit. Why not bring that kind of gym to them? And Tim, you were also saying that we need to bring, real gyms to the people, because back then you had the extremes. You had hardcore, dirty, unfriendly gyms, and then the other extreme, you had the spas, the Jack LaLanne European Health Spa, almost funny in today's world. So we pioneered a new kind of gym. The first gym I opened in San Francisco, ironically, had the same equipment as the Gold's Gym in Santa Monica. It was designed by George Popasic and Joe Gold, and it was about the same size. And that became an incredible facility for the Bay Area. And then we grew from there. But we were a licensing operation to begin with because we didn't have a business plan. We didn't have a manual. It was basically use of the name for a fee.
Okay.
And then over time, we developed, a Gold's Gym University and a little bit more of a program. But I don't think you can quite rubber stamp the gyms because, the areas mandate a certain difference often. Like the Gold Gym in San Francisco had no babysitting facilities. The members didn't typically have kids, but right now it has a very elaborate daycare for dogs because so many members apparently have animals. So, Gold Gym Moscow had a full-time coat check person for people's fur coats.
Yeah, right.
So it's just every gym. I love the fact you could go all over and every gym was somewhat different.
Yeah.
Like reflected the area that it was in. I didn't want to, we were not selling hamburgers. I didn't want a cookie cutter approach. That we let our gym owners, interpret Gold's Gym for their market.
Yeah. That was John Lloyd that owned that San Francisco one, right?
No, he worked there. He was my first employee.
Okay.
Ironically, yeah, Boston Lloyd's dad was my first employee.
Yeah.
And his son is, I think, a surprise to both of us. John Lloyd worked there with Bob Reese and Neil Spruce and Dick Ferris.
Okay.
Bill Camber was the one that trained Rich Piana.
Oh, really? Okay.
So it goes back in bodybuilding history there. Yeah, I think
remember.
I'm leaving out Barry Clothier. Anyway, I had a team of bodybuilders that Neil wrote up nutrition programs for the members, way ahead of its time. And
Yeah, I remember that.
the guys were terrific. We were very successful from the get-go.
Let's talk a little bit about the atmosphere of the Mecca of Gold's in the 80s. One of the things I remember you said, Ed, was that you wanted to have the music real loud, and that would create sort of a rock and roll atmosphere. And then,
Well, in writing my book, again, I hate to keep repeating that, but I keep thinking, because why was Gold's, why did it have that atmosphere, that energy? And I think a lot of it was the music. Pete even had this theory that the people fed off each other because of the sound waves or the music. And, when you think about it, what's changed over the past 45 years is the way people listen to music. Now everyone's got something in their ear.
right,
They're all tuned out. I
Right.
really think it was the music in the gym that made a huge difference. Tim, what do you think? Back in
Huge
the day.
difference.
And because but nowadays everybody is in their own little world on on Spotify or whatever.
yeah,
So no, that was huge. The when I would take over a gym or buy a gym, the first thing I would do would be to buy a $25,000 sound system.
wow, okay,
And that's, it was like, how could you have Studio 54 in New York without the music?
right, yeah,
It was essential.
yeah. Yeah, that makes sense with the camaraderie, because it was like nobody's had the headphones on, right? Nobody's got the earbuds in back then. So they're all just listening to the music and they're all interacting with each other. And that's what created the atmosphere and the camaraderie, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, there was and there was no Instagram or whatever. You had to go to the
no
gym.
cell phones, right?
Yeah, you had to go to the gym to see what was going on. You couldn't
Yeah,
just sit
yeah.
home and watch it, in your bedroom. You had people, Tim, I'm sure you knew people that would, even if they weren't going to work out, they had to come down to the gym to see what was happening.
Yeah,
Right?
right.
I mean, it was addictive.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's what drives me crazy today, because I come from the 80s working out. And when I see these guys today, it's like everybody's got their headphones on, they're all tuned into themselves, nobody's interacting with each other, there's no camaraderie. Like, even a lot of guys don't even work out with other people. We used to always have training partners, and we always just to bullshit with each other and give each other shit. And it's like it created the whole atmosphere. It made the whole gym atmosphere fun. And I think a lot of that now is just everybody's in their own world. It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And John, I don't think, in kind of thinking about all the people I knew that did quite well in the sport, none of them trained alone. He was having a great training partner.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if you go back to Arnold always said that, whenever you get ready for a show, you always want to make sure you had a good training partner. And back in the 80s, it was always like, you knew who was training together. I remember Robbie was training with Mike Quinn for a while, and didn't Mike Christian train with the Barbarian brothers? It was like everybody had partners, right?
Yeah.
Well, there were no gurus. So
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah.
Your training partner was, quote, your guru.
Yeah. Yeah. When these guys got ready for a show, they just did it on their own. So
Right.
sometimes they would make it, sometimes they would miss it, but it was just always, it was like an individual thing. They were always doing it on their own.
I don't understand the guys today who are advertising, giving training advice, and yet they also have their own guru training them. But I mean,
Yeah, right.
I suppose I can see that to some degree, but that's a whole new world that never existed.
Yeah, yeah.
In fact, Tim, I think it amazes me. I don't know about Tim, but people would say there's no money in bodybuilding, but there are hundreds of thousands of men and women all over the world right now making a very good living, training people who they never even see. They do it all online. Is that right? Would you say, John? I mean, I hear what some of the people are making. I mean, it's a lot of six-figure income.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Boston Lloyd included.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Tim, what do you think of the gyms today, the atmosphere with what's going on with, cell phones and things?
Yeah, I was training at a small gym up here in Sandpoint, Idaho. And I was guilty of it myself in the early days. I would just put headphones on because I didn't want to be bothered.
Yeah.
I just wanted to do my thing. But now I'm thinking, and I've gone back to, no, I want to be able to, share my wisdom or whatever I have, to give.
Yeah.
And with the younger people or anybody that, is interested. And So yeah, but most of the people, even up here, put the headphones on
Yeah.
and listen to music. I think a lot of them are also doing workouts, listening to a training workouts or
Oh,
regimen
okay. Yeah.
on them as well. They watch their little videos and then do the exercise and stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So I get both sides, so
Yeah.
I understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just look at those days like at Gold's, in the 80s with a sense of nostalgia, I guess, when everybody was listening to the rock and roll music. I think you made a good point, Ed, with comparing it to Studio 54. It just had that energy and it had the music and the camaraderie. And I think that's what made it the Mecca. That's what made it so great.
I don't see anybody up here with a training partner.
Really?
Everybody's
Wow.
doing their own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think times change, and for better or for worse, they change.
Yeah. Well, like you said, Ed, maybe we'll go back a little bit to, how things come around again with the classic physiques and the smaller gyms, maybe we'll recapture some of that, what we used to have,
It's quite possible. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely think with the classic physiques, I agree with you. I think there is a big need for that. And I think people are maybe getting sick of the mass monsters and they want a more aesthetic physique. I think that's what people would prefer to look like, in other words,
But you know what? It's funny, but people are bashing the mass monsters and stuff. And I certainly don't want to look like that, nor would I've ever want to be that way. But I also see where there obviously is a market for that.
Yeah.
And, if those people want to have that and look like that, then okay, do that.
Yeah.
And then, for those who don't, then, promote classic competitions.
Yeah.
You don't have to promote that aspect.
Right.
But for those who want to, then let them have it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do your own thing. If you want, natural physiques, you want, classic physiques.
Right. Yeah.
Then promote those shows.
Yeah, that is one good thing. Now they have separate divisions for everybody. Where back in the day, it was like all the guys were in one contest. So you'd have a mass monster, but then you'd have a Frank Zane type of physique. And then there'd always be controversy after the show. Like, how could Frank Zane beat this mass monster?
Yeah.
It was all different opinions, but yeah, now it is separated into different divisions.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't have a problem with that either.
Yeah.
Well,
All right,
John,
guys. Yeah.
I wouldn't have that argument with Joe Weider up until the day he died. He thought the fans wanted to see the mass monsters, but I felt it was because those fans are the most vocal, that they yell the loudest, that he got a warped opinion of what people really want to see.
Yeah.
And there's a certain group that wants to see this extreme, but I don't think nowadays it's the majority.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of give credit to the judges back then, because it really had to be a challenge for them, having all these different types of physique in one event. And then they had to pick out who was the best, and posing played a big role in it, and the definition, and they were really going for the symmetry as well as, how do you judge someone like a Mohammed Makaway against a Bertil Fox? It was like two totally different types of physiques.
Well, that's where I miss Wayne DeMilia, because I think he was on the right path to kind of correct that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the judging nowadays is somewhat responsible for where we are, and it's not good.
Yeah, yeah, because the competitor is going to follow whatever the judging standard is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as they know in advance what the judge is looking for, then they can be accordingly.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. All right, guys. Well, I want to thank you guys for both joining me on the show. Ed Connors and Tim Kimber. It was a pleasure talking to you guys about the old days of Gold's Gym and how it got all started. And Ed, we wish you the best of luck with your book. We're all looking forward to that.
Thank you.
It had to be a challenge putting that all together. I'm sure it's a huge book.
It's probably the most work I've ever done, but it's been a joy. And Tim actually finished his book long before mine, and I think it's very well written. I'm hoping it'll get published too at some point.
You've got a book too, Tim?
Well, yeah, I wrote one, but I shelved it because
Oh, really?
I felt after I read it, I go, this may be offensive to some people. And I thought, you know what, I need to maybe re-edit this or something, because I don't want to offend anybody. And so
I have made
sure Ed's book is an encyclopedia of bodybuilding.
I've made an effort to sanitize mine, at least this first copy. So
Okay.
John, it was an honor. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Tim. It was great meeting you, and I'm glad you were able to come on the show. And Ed, it's always great talking to you as well. I really appreciated it. I enjoyed the conversation I had with you guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye,
Okay,
Tim.
guys. All right.
Bye, Ed.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.